In your first year as Senator Warren, Congress was unable to tighten gun control laws even after the murders of 20 children in Newtown, Connecticut. Tell voters what you can deliver on in your second term, if you were to get one, considering Washington remains divided.
Statistically speaking, 8 children died today from gun violence, and 8 more will die tomorrow, and 8 the day after that, while Congress can do nothing because Congress is held hostage by the NRA. So for me, what this is about fighting back against the NRA. Now, the NRA has endorsed Jeff Deal. I think that's wrong. I think what we have to do is have some compromise. I'm willing to compromise. I voted in favor of a compromise position. But right now, the NRA won't permit it. And you know, the extraordinary lengths to which they've gone. The NRA will not permit us now in Congress to vote on things that most of America agrees on, strengthening background checks, deciding that terrorists should not be able to buy guns, no fly, no buy, bump stocks. We've got things that we could do in Washington to help make all of our kids safer. But we've got to have the courage to stand up and do it. What will I do? I want to answer your question. I will stay in this fight. I have been in this fight from the beginning. And I'll tell you something else. I try to get in more and more people who are allies so that we can keep our kids safe. I'm not down in Washington to work for the NRA. I'm down in Washington to work for the people of Massachusetts.
Representative Deal, you have been endorsed by the NRA. Are any changes needed to federal law?
Well, first of all, law-abiding gun owners are not the problem. In fact, in Massachusetts, we've done a pretty effective job of having gun laws that have prevented a lot of the tragedies we've heard nationwide. We do have problems with people coming into our country illegally, however, and with Senator Warren's open borders and getting rid of ICE, getting rid of the agency that would work to get rid of people who are here illegally committing crimes, and we know with the ICE with the MS-13 gang members that have been arrested here in Boston. 61 members were rounded up last year. It was rape. It was murder. These people are preying on an immigrant community, and they need to be identified and deported. If it were up to Elizabeth Warren, they would be out of here. You know, I actually have been endorsed by a police agency a police union that's never endorsed a Republican candidate for U.S. Senate before, the Boston Patrolmen's Union. And Mike Leary, the president, is here today. The reason that Mike, and I believe that his members look at me as someone who is the right candidate for this job, is I believe in letting law enforcement do the jobs of making sure that those who are here illegally committing crimes, including gun crimes, are deported. And that, I think that's a big difference between myself and Senator Warren.
Senator Warren, do you have a rebuttal?
Yeah, I'd just like to point out about what that answer was. You asked, is there anything at all that ought to be changed in our federal gun laws? And Mr. Deal's response was, let's switch this over to immigration and blame the immigrants for the problem here. Look, the fundamental question is, do we need some change in our laws? And the answer is yes, just some sensible changes in our law. But right now, the NRA says no. And having said no, Mr. Deal has no changes, not one single change that he says that he will embrace. You know, I just want to make the point, you raised this in terms of the context of a mass shooting. We think about this again because of the synagogue.
In Pittsburgh, right.
But children are dying everywhere. They die on the sidewalks, they die in school, they die in playgrounds. All of our children are precious, and we need better gun laws to protect all of them.
So let's bring it back, Representative Deal. Are there any changes needed to federal law?
You know, just real quick, a teenager was killed on an East Boston beach by an MS-13 gang member that was arrested about 3 weeks ago. Under Senator Warren's plan, there will be no agency that can actually identify and deport somebody who's committed that crime. When it comes to gun laws, I do have a national priority, which is making national reciprocity happen. First of all, if you live in Massachusetts and you have a driver's license, you can travel to other states using that driver's license. But if you have a Class A carry, federal ID for owning a gun, you can't go to another state using a Massachusetts ID. What I want to do is make sure that we have a uniform national gun license that takes all the best options of other states, uses some of the effective gun laws in Massachusetts so that other states like Indiana, that are a weak state when it comes to gun laws and keeping illegal guns off the streets, having that national reciprocity to me is one of the solutions.
You would have a national law, right? In other words, if someone from Indiana could come into Massachusetts.
Actually, what would happen is once we decided on a national identification process, a national licensing, our laws and other states' laws would be used, replacing what Indiana has as a weak partner.
Senator, do you have a response to that?
Yeah, I do. So the reciprocity law that the NRA does approve, that has passed the House of Representatives with a Republican majority, is one that says if you can get a license down in Texas and Texas permits concealed carry, when you come to Massachusetts, you'll be able to conceal carry in Massachusetts, whether Massachusetts permits that or not. The idea that
We do allow concealed carry in Massachusetts.
The idea that someone is going to agree around the country to Massachusetts' stronger gun laws when we can't get a single bill through the United States Senate right now that has even the tiniest bit of background check or that prevents terrorists from owning guns is just, it is not sensible. It is not true that this is going to happen. What we're talking about is NRA. He says he will do whatever the NRA wants. Not me. I'm here to try to protect our children.
Will you do what the NRA wants, Representative Deal?
I've always been an independent voice on Beacon Hill, and when I go to Washington, I'll bring a Massachusetts voice to the discussion when it comes to gun laws. Massachusetts is doing it right. We need to make sure other states come into compliance. With Senator Warren, you will have no seat at the table based on the fact that she is unable to work with the administration and with a Republican-controlled Senate, which I anticipate will be the case after the midterms.